Hello and welcome to Warblog. This is a development video to cover the long-promised feature of irregular units having enhanced surprise attacks. So essentially, this is an irregular unit. He can attack any unit that is of strength 5 or less, and he will essentially get a 4-time bonus on his strength. So essentially what this replicates is the nature of the irregular units in the way they carry out things. I mean, you could almost consider them as a special force, and that is possibly, you know, what you might want to describe them as. They just fight in a very different way. I think maybe the best definition of how the irregulars fight from my perspective is the account of their operations in Afghanistan. I think it's The Bear Went Over the Mountain, or Afghanistan, How a Superpower Fought and Lost. These two books I've got, one in PDF format. But essentially it sort of states that they would quite often go on the offensive, but their attacks would be quite specific. So they would have maybe a group of just 20 people. They would have one that would be an observer. They would have say a team of 3 people that would actually carry out a distraction act. So this might be to sort of feign an assault on a particular front. If you were attacking a base, they might attack it from one side, attracting all the defenders to that side, and then they would carry out their main assault on another side. They would have another unit which would be that they would carry out preparation, acts of preparation. So they might go in there and actually lay some explosives beforehand, some mines or things like that. And then there would be another small team of, say, 3 people that would be in reserve. So if there was something going wrong, or they needed something additional effort in one place. So the Mujahideen were quite organised in that regards, and it's that in that capacity that I see these working. And that's, I'm not putting irregular units in where there are large army forces. It's only when they've lost sort of main structure of their army, as they have in this sort of situation. But it does make them quite powerful. So essentially, just to maybe recap over what the irregulars can do, and this is another game change. They don't, zone to control don't affect them. They pretty much retreat on anything other than they've got an 80% chance of retreating from any combat result, which is pretty good, and they get this massive modifier. So we're going to do this attack here. Maybe play the game first. So because he's less than 5 or less, when I attack into there, he's 8.8. Now he's got he's basically, that's 2 times 4, which is 8, but because he's got a surround of 10%, that's another 8. And he's only got a defense of 2. So this represents that incredibly sharp surprise attack that the irregular units can do. Now, the thing to sort of bear in mind is that, wow, that's really good. Well, what it is actually, and I've yet to really sort of digest the potency of that. My initial objective was to rank it up to 5, but it's actually it's a little trickier. To be quite honest, I haven't really put a huge amount of thought into the code to possibly identify a way of doing it the way I wanted to do it. It's just really simple to actually just multiply it from the way the code works. I did do it at 5, but what my possible long-term objective will be to make all irregular units a 1-1-3, a 1-1-3 or 1-1-6, but basically a 1-1, so that I can then make it 5. But when I times 1 by 5, I thought, hang on, why is it 10? Oh, because he's strength of 10. So that's that really. I mean, the thing is, you can't hold anything with the regulars. What it's going to force people to do is to essentially keep stacks of more than 5. What I might actually do is modify that to to a 4. I don't know. I mean, basically, the fact that the maths is in now, I can go in and change the actual factors relatively easily. So that is now in place. So it means these irregulars can, they can really come out, and they can, can jump in there, and more to the point, they can actually group up. So there's 3 irregular units here. They could all pounce on this and get 6 times 4, 24 to 2. I mean, that would be a 7 to 1. They could really go around causing a lot of damage to small units. And I think this sort of, although again I've yet to digest it really to get my head around the balance of it, because now it's in play, I can start to build the games with the balance in mind. I did actually think that all these irregulars were 1-1-3, and I probably will be doing them as 1-1-3, but I'm certainly not going to go through games changing them. So we'll have to sort of compromise on that. But basically, what I'm trying to build up here is a sort of a secondary sort of level of combat that allows people to sort of model the asymmetric war that we're seeing. Not so much these days, but we have been seeing since 1945. This is one of the reasons I've chosen this year, and it's modern war. I keep sort of in my mind's eye going across the sort of the concept of, I mean, in the 80s when I was sort of maybe looking at, these sorts of things in my younger years, I basically, the Second World War was 40 years earlier. Now, I mean, from the First World War was to me then what the Second World War is to all of us now. It's prehistory. We've now got the Second World War finished in 1945, so that's about 70 years ago. That's nearly 3/4 of a century. We're approaching 75 years since the Second World War. It might as well be the Napoleonic. We've had post Second World War military operations for a long time, and it's not really reflected. Now, we've never had a hugely synchronous war. I mean, the Iran-Iraq war, maybe you could say that was fairly equally balanced, but and there are quite a few others. The Angolan conflicts, but many of them, and most of them, are a little more asynchronous. Even the Vietnam War, lots of small operations against smaller regular units. So I'm trying to build up this sort of thing that you can actually play that asynchronous sort of style. So for example, in this, you've got relatively powerful units, but they can't hold any ground. It's not. They've still only got a defense of 2, and they probably have a defense of 1 when they get through with it all. And so you could sweep through here, but the problem is, so the same with the recent game on the recent Nigerian West African offensive that I just did. Unless you're careful about it, they just retreat, and so you end up chasing irregular units around the board. So you have to really actually start thinking, well, I know I can defeat the enemy, but I've got to defeat them in a way that it's not just going to come back, and that includes basically surrounding them, blocking off lines of retreat. I mean, there's nothing particularly clever about it in that regards, but you know that you've got the military might to sort of beat them, and so I'm trying to sort of reflect that, because essentially what you can see here is a company, and if you were to attack that, it would be destroyed. And so you can't really model that sort of irregular type activity where the enemy was elusive and hard to pin down. There's lots of stories about the Vietnam War that I've read through on the scenarios, where they talk about they attacked a village and nightfall came down, and when they sort of they surrounded the village, and when they started the next day, everyone had gone. They're difficult to sort of to pin down, and so they will, and it's actually quite new. For example, this is an irregular unit, so we're following along the road. It should, fingers crossed, be able to go straight through that zone of control. That's not something that a normal unit can do. So that's that. So the irregular units are now pretty much up to speed with what they've always been promised to be. Just as a little aside, and maybe a mental note, I am thinking, I've probably brought up this little thing down here. There will be like a hearts thing. I'm going to introduce, I'm not sure when, because it's probably a long way off, I only just thought of it today, but a hearts and mind factor to everything. And the hearts and mind factor will be hopefully another angle on modelling modern warfare, where a lot of it is down to the concept of hearts and mind. I don't really dig that. I'm not really into that sort of approach because it's I wouldn't say it's wishy-washy, but I don't want it to bog down the gameplay, and so it would be a factor that had no effect on gameplay, and if any, very, very minimal. I don't like anything that sort of disallows you from doing anything. This is one of the reasons why I don't like supply, because I don't want you to sort of think, well, hang on, why can't I move this? Oh, I'm not in supply. You know, it's a gameplay that can be dealt with, can be lost. The same with leadership. You know, a lot of games will have, you have to roll a command value to see whether you can actually move your unit, and or you have activation points, and you can only move a certain number of units, and all this stuff just makes the game just difficult to play. So I don't want to do anything that's going to restrict the ability to play. So it's not going to be as though, you know, you've done really badly on the hearts and mind, and all of a sudden, you know, you can't move things or you can't do things. You'll always be able to do things, but you know, I think having a factor that makes the manual objective of the game actually incorporate the hearts and minds issue. So basically, things that will do will be things that will cover will be sort of bombing towns. You know, if you use artillery on a town, you'll lose, you know, your hearts and mind score. If you engage the enemy and you lose, you'll lose. You'll gain points by being in a town and actually carrying out a specific hearts and mind activity. You know, so you might actually specify that this unit is on hearts and mind operations or something like that. Like they did in Afghanistan and a lot of wars since the Vietnam War. You know, they're just sort of spending more time building, you know, benches and helping people start their businesses up to try and get the people on their side. And so I want to introduce that because I think that you know, when you do, well, no, I do, but when you sort of listen to what a lot of people are saying, it comes across that you know, this is a sort of a big part of. It's a big part of sort of the way people look at modern games. For example, when I look at quite a few of these organisations and entities and people that deal with modern warfare, a lot of them are into things like COIN, which is counter-insurgency activity, and also it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, it's all about. So a lot of people are focusing on that more than just the sort of what they call the, I don't know, the ballistic, the kinetic aspect of war. Personally, I don't really think that's what wargaming is all about from this perspective. You know, you gotta make, you know, they're still driving around in tanks and shooting each other. And that's what we're modelling. So it'll only be an aside and an addition. So anyway, that's just sort of just a broader aspect on, you know, the sort of the premise and the sort of the meaning of, well, the purpose for these irregular units. You know, so it's in the grander scheme. That's hopefully it should fit in to give us a nice model of, you know, modern warfare. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I know I warbled there, but warbling's what I do best. So hope you enjoy it. I'll speak to you later. Cheers, bye.